Welcome, brave souls, to the realm of the unknown. Here, in the heart of darkness, we unravel the chilling tales that lurk in the shadows, stories that will grip your imagination and chill you to the core. Prepare yourself for spine-tingling narratives that delve into the depths of fear, where every whisper holds a secret and every shadow conceals a terror. Join our community of thrill seekers as we explore the macabre, the mysterious, and the downright terrifying. But remember, once you enter, there's no turning back. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a moment of our haunting adventures. Are you ready to embrace the fear? The darkness awaits. In the heart of a vast, ancient forest, there stood a dilapidated cabin known as Whispering Pines. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, sharing chilling tales of strange sounds and shadows flitting between the trees. Yet for Sarah, an aspiring writer seeking solitude, it was the perfect retreat to ignite her creativity. She arrived just as dusk painted the sky in deep purples and fiery oranges. The cabin loomed ahead, its windows dark and hollow, inviting yet foreboding. With a determined breath, she pushed open the creaky door, the hinges groaning like a warning. Inside, dust motes danced in the fading light. The cabin had an eerie charm, rustic furniture, a stone fireplace, and shelves lined with forgotten books. As night fell, she lit a fire, its flickering glow casting long shadows that seemed to twist and writhe, making the atmosphere both cozy and unsettling. That first night, Sarah settled into a comfortable routine, jotting down ideas for her novel while the wind howled outside. Yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Occasionally, she thought she heard whispers carried on the wind, but dismissed them as mere figments of her imagination, a trick of the night. On the second night, sleep eluded her. The whispers grew louder, weaving through the trees like an insistent melody. "Come find us." Panic seized her, and she slipped outside into the cold night, flashlight in hand. The moon hung low, illuminating the forest with an eerie glow. As she ventured deeper, the whispers morphed into coherent words, clear and urgent. "Come find us." Her heart raced, and she turned back, racing towards the cabin. But the woods seemed to conspire against her. Branches snagged at her clothes, roots twisted underfoot, and shadows danced just beyond her vision. Inside, she barricaded the door and tried to calm her racing heart. Hours passed, but the whispers echoed through her mind. It felt as though the trees themselves were alive, yearning to tell her a story, one she didn't want to hear. The next morning, Sarah resolved to leave. But when she awoke, her belongings lay scattered around the cabin, and her car keys were nowhere to be found. Frantic, she searched every corner, her heart pounding as she realized it was as if the forest had swallowed them whole. As night fell once more, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. Now she could almost make out faces in the shadows, pale figures trapped in the trees, their expressions twisted in despair. Panic turned to dread as realization washed over her. The stories about the cabin weren't mere folklore, they were warnings. The woods were hungry. Desperate, Sarah gathered her courage and stepped outside. This time, she called into the darkness. "Who are you? What do you want?" The forest fell silent, then the whispers swirled back, echoing her question. "What do you want?" In that moment, she understood. The cabin fed on fear and longing, trapping souls who had once sought refuge. She had come looking for inspiration, but she had awakened something far older and darker. With newfound determination, she returned to the cabin and faced the fireplace. She gathered the old books from the shelves, their pages yellowed and crumbling, and set them ablaze. The flames crackled to life, casting a warm glow that fought against the encroaching shadows. But as the fire roared higher, the whispers grew frantic, the shadows twisting into anguished shapes. Suddenly, the door burst open, and the forest surged in, a tide of darkness. The figures she had glimpsed before now emerged fully, their faces contorted in pain. The air crackled with energy, and Sarah's heart raced. "I release you," she shouted, her voice echoing in the chaos. The flames leapt, and the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of despair merging into one. The figures began to dissolve, absorbed by the fire, their whispers fading into the night like smoke in the wind. As dawn broke, the cabin stood silent, the air still heavy with the scent of burnt paper. Sarah found her keys lying innocently on the table, untouched. She left the cabin behind, vowing never to return. As she drove away, the whispers faded into memory, but she could still feel the weight of the forest pressing against her. A reminder that some stories should remain untold, and some woods should be left unexplored. The ancient trees watched her depart, their secrets safely hidden once more, waiting for the next curious soul to wander into the whispering pines. Nestled at the edge of a dense forest, the last house on Maple Hill stood isolated and forlorn. Its paint had long since peeled, revealing the gray wood beneath, and the garden was overgrown with weeds and wildflowers that danced in the wind. The locals whispered about the place, claiming it was haunted. It had been abandoned for years, ever since a series of mysterious disappearances began to plague the town. One crisp autumn afternoon, Julia, a determined journalist with a penchant for uncovering the truth, decided to investigate the house. Armed with her notebook, camera, and a flashlight, she parked her car at the bottom of the hill and began the trek up the overgrown path. As she climbed, the wind rustled the leaves, creating an eerie symphony that seemed to guide her steps. When she reached the front porch, she paused, staring at the warped door. Her heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Taking a deep breath, she pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, echoing in the silence of the house. Inside, dust coated every surface, and cobwebs hung like veils from the corners. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay. Julia switched on her flashlight, illuminating the faded wallpaper, which depicted a once vibrant floral pattern now dulled by time. She made her way through the narrow hallway, the floorboards groaning under her weight, as if protesting her intrusion. In the living room, old furniture lay draped in white sheets. A heavy, ornate mirror hung on the wall, its surface clouded. Julia approached it, intrigued by its grandeur despite the layers of grime. As she wiped the glass with her sleeve, she caught a glimpse of movement behind her, a fleeting shadow darting past the doorframe. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. Shaking off the chill that ran down her spine, she resumed her exploration, moving into the kitchen. The room was cluttered with forgotten utensils and a rusty stove. A tattered journal lay open on the table, its pages yellowed and brittle. Curiosity piqued, Julia leaned closer. The entries chronicled the life of the last resident, a woman named Clara who had lived alone in the house. The final entry sent a shiver through Julia. The whispers are getting louder. I fear they want something from me. Chilled but intrigued, Julia flipped through the pages, discovering more entries filled with Clara's growing paranoia. The final entry was dated the night Clara vanished. Julia felt an inexplicable connection to the woman. Clara's fears echoed in her own heart, amplifying her determination to uncover the truth. As she continued her investigation, the shadows seemed to deepen around her, and the whispers, soft at first, began to rise again, sibilant and insistent. Leave, they urged, their voices barely audible, like a breeze rustling through dry leaves. Ignoring the mounting sense of dread, Julia climbed the staircase to the second floor. The hallway was lined with closed doors. She hesitated at the first one, then turned the knob and stepped inside. The bedroom was as forlorn as the rest of the house, with a dust-covered bed and a wardrobe that had seen better days. As she rummaged through the drawers, she found a small locket. Inside, a faded photograph of Clara smiled back at her. Julia's heart ached. She felt the weight of the woman's loneliness and fear. Just then, the whispers intensified, echoing off the walls. "Help us!" Startled, Julia dropped the locket, its clatter breaking the oppressive silence. She turned to leave, but found the door had swung shut on its own. Panic surged as she pushed against it, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers transformed into urgent cries, filling the room with a cacophony of desperation. "Help us! Don't leave us!" Julia's breath quickened as she stumbled back. The shadows in the room thickened, swirling around her. The mirror on the wall began to ripple, reflecting not just the room but scenes of Clara's life, her laughter, her solitude, and then the darkness that descended upon her. In a moment of clarity, Julia understood that the house wasn't just haunted by Clara's spirit. It was a prison for all the souls lost to the woods, their lives intertwined with her own. They were reaching out, seeking liberation from the grip of the malevolent force that resided there. Summoning her courage, Julia began to speak aloud. "I'm here to help you. Tell me what you need." The whispers quieted, and she felt an overwhelming sadness fill the air. Slowly, the door creaked open, and Julia stepped back into the hallway, her heart pounding. She continued down the corridor, drawn to the last door at the end, which stood slightly ajar. Pushing it open, she entered a small, dimly lit room. In the center stood an old rocking chair, and on the floor lay a tattered quilt. The walls were adorned with sketches, crude but hauntingly beautiful depictions of the forest and the figures that wandered through it. As she examined the sketches, Julia noticed a pattern. The figures were all women, their faces twisted in anguish. Suddenly, the whispers returned, now urgent and pleading. "Free us. We cannot leave." Realizing what she needed to do, Julia took a deep breath and began to speak, channeling all her strength and determination. "I release you from this place. You are not bound to this house anymore." As the words left her lips, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the light from her flashlight. The air crackled with energy, and the shadows began to swirl violently. Julia felt a pull, as if the very fabric of the room was shifting. The whispers rose to a deafening crescendo. "Thank you," they cried, voices intertwining in a beautiful harmony. The rocking chair began to sway, and the sketches shimmered with light. One by one, the faces of the lost women appeared, glowing softly in the darkness, their expressions transforming from fear to gratitude. With a final surge of energy, the figures began to dissolve into motes of light, swirling around Julia before shooting out into the open air. The house trembled, the walls shaking as if releasing years of pent-up sorrow. When the storm of energy subsided, the house stood still. The sunlight began to filter through the dusty windows, illuminating the once dark corners. Julia felt a profound sense of peace wash over her, and the oppressive weight that had hung in the air lifted. As she made her way downstairs, the whispers had faded, replaced by a serene silence. Stepping outside, she breathed in the fresh air, feeling a lightness in her heart. The house on Maple Hill, once a source of dread, now felt like a sanctuary. Julia knew she had not only uncovered the truth, but had freed the spirits trapped within those walls. With one last look at the house, she turned away, knowing she would carry the stories of Clara and the others with her forever. The forest, once shrouded in darkness, now felt welcoming, alive with the sounds of nature. As she drove away, Julia smiled, grateful for the adventure that had turned into something profoundly meaningful. The last house on Maple Hill was no longer a place of fear, but a reminder of the strength of compassion and the power of release. On a frigid winter night, deep in the snow-covered forests of northern Canada, a trapper named Elias found himself alone in his cabin. The howling wind outside seemed alive, carrying whispers that scraped at his sanity. Supplies were running low, and hunger gnawed at his stomach like a relentless wolf. Elias had heard the old stories from the Cree elders, warnings of a creature that stalked the starving and desperate. They called it the Wendigo, a spirit of insatiable hunger that turned people into monsters when they gave in to their darkest cravings. But Elias dismissed the tales as superstition, at least until that night. The whispers grew louder, shaping into a voice deep, guttural, and cold as death. It called his name. Gripping his rifle, Elias peered out into the darkness. At first, he saw nothing but the swirling snow. Then, two pinpricks of yellow light emerged, like glowing eyes in the abyss. Elias slammed the door shut and bolted it. The voice came again, this time from inside the cabin. His heart thundered as he turned. There it stood, a towering figure, its gaunt body covered in matted fur, its antlered head crowned with decay. The stench of rot filled the room. "You called me," the Wendigo rasped, its hollow eyes locking onto Elias. "Your hunger summoned me." Elias stumbled back, clutching his rifle. He fired, but the bullets seemed to pass through the creature like smoke. The Wendigo grinned, its jagged teeth gleaming. "Now you must feed." Suddenly, the room spun, and Elias felt a searing pain in his chest. The Wendigo lunged, its claws raking his flesh. Darkness enveloped him. When Elias awoke, he was no longer human. He stood in the snow, his limbs elongated, his skin stretched tight over a monstrous frame. The hunger inside him was unbearable. The Wendigo's voice echoed in his mind. "Welcome to eternity." And from then on, Elias roamed the woods, his hunger never sated, a new Wendigo stalking the lonely and desperate in the endless winter.
Thanks for joining us in the shadows tonight. If you enjoyed the terror, like and subscribe for more spine-chilling stories. Share your thoughts below. And remember, stay close to the light. Until next time, sleep tight if you can.